Well, thank you very much, Neil, Rebecca, Jane, Ben, Patricia, for having me here, and thank you very much for hanging around to the end of the day to listen to what I have to say. I'm meant to be talking about Brexit, very happy to talk about Brexit. Is Brexit what you'd like to hear about? Yeah, okay, brilliant. Well, first and foremost, we haven't got Brexit. When we voted for Brexit, we voted to take back control of our laws, our borders, our fish, and our cash. And at every single level, we have failed to deliver on that mandate. The Tory party manifesto of 2019, which delivered Boris Johnson his 80-seat majority, is fantastic on page 5. And I recommend everyone go to page 5 of the Tory party manifesto and read it. They've observed their obligations to Brexit in the breach. And right at the front of the declarations that they make on page 5 is a commitment that the country would leave the European Union as one united kingdom. And that is perhaps the most fundamental aspect of the promises that they've broken, because, as I'm sure you all know now, Northern Ireland has, to a very significant extent, been left behind in the EU. And why does that matter? Well, it matters at two levels. It matters first and foremost because there are 1.8 million British citizens who live in Northern Ireland. And what kind of country are we if we turn our back on them and allow a foreign power to make foreign laws, impose them on our people, and have them adjudicated by their court? What sort of country have we become when we allow British citizens to be subject to that sort of abuse? But the other reason it matters, and the reason I think that the EU did it, was because it makes it very difficult for the United Kingdom as a whole to chart an independent path if Northern Ireland is caught in a grappling hook, held tightly close to the European Union regulatory framework. For every law that we make that deviates from the EU, we say more and more, we put greater and greater clear water between ourselves and Northern Ireland. We say goodbye to Northern Ireland. And if you want a visual impression of what the ultimate outcome of that is, we will lose the Saltire of St. Patrick on the Union Jack. The Union Jack itself will have to change if Northern Ireland is lost. And it seems to me that people in government simply don't care about Northern Ireland. They have become so politically weak that they were prepared to turn their back on Northern Ireland to get this wretched business of Brexit done. When we talk about the fight, which we all have, because we're all cut from the same kind of political cloth, when we talk about the fight to reclaim our language, to reclaim our values, to reclaim our heritage, to reclaim the right to be proud of whom we are, where we came from, and our history, when we're fighting for all those, it's exactly the same sort of fight, but less important than the fight to reclaim Northern Ireland. I can't tell you how critically important that is. Then the other method by which they prevented Brexit from happening is in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. We've signed up to something called a level playing field, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So we've signed up to aligning ourselves with EU law, such as it was on the 31st of December 2020 when we left the single market, in matters of state aid, employment, competition, and environment. So, for example, under the environmental provisions, we cannot get off the net zero bandwagon. We are committed in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement not to regress from any environmental laws that were on British statute books at 31st December 2020. And remember, Theresa May, as one of her parting shots, put onto our statutes book a commitment to deliver net zero by 2050. And the commitment is explicit. Even if these laws have future effect, we're not allowed to deviate from them. So net zero is a matter of treaty commitment. Our government can't buy British first, because under the competition provisions of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, we have to open it up to tender to EU firms. We can only buy British first in matters of national security. In terms of state aid, we are bound again by EU laws. Northern Ireland is bound by dynamic commitment to EU law on state aid. So as the EU changes its laws, Northern Ireland gets caught. We're caught by EU state aid laws such as they were at 31st December 2020. And we're caught by their employment laws. And paradoxically, the more restrictive employment law is, the less likely you are to have employment in your country, because employers are much more reticent to employ when you have restrictive employment practices. And what we need to do, all the things I was listening to before I got up to speak, what we need to do as a country is to deregulate, to wean the state off our taxes, to wean the state off large borrowings, and allow us, first and foremost, to keep the pound that we earn in our pocket. The withdrawal agreement and the trade and cooperation agreement conspire to prevent us from being able to do exactly that. So when Boris Johnson says he got Brexit done, actually all he did was leave the institutions of the European Union. So we left the Commission, we left the European Court of we haven't left the European Court of Human Rights. We've left the European Union, the ECJ, the European Court. That's the word I was looking for. We've left the Parliament and we've left, the various institutions, but we haven't broken our connection with the European Union. So as a country, we can't, at the moment, chart an independent path with British national interest first. We are absolutely tied at the hip. And the European Court of Human Rights is a commitment that we've made in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. It sits outside the EU, but we've made a commitment to adhere to the Convention and be subject to the court in that Trade and Cooperation Agreement. There's also something called Horizon Europe, which I'm just going to touch on at the moment. I'm just looking at time because I don't want to go on too long. But there's something called Horizon Europe. Who in the room has heard of Horizon Europe? Okay, there's a lot in the press about how the EU aren't allowing us to become members of Horizon Europe, which is a research program, because they're punishing us for not dealing with them fairly as they see it on the Northern Ireland Protocol. We do not want to be participants in Horizon Europe. Yes, it's a research program, but it's a research program designed to promote EU policies, designed to promote the European Union, including research into military development. Do you really want your pounds going across to Brussels to empower the European Union to develop its own military? That's not what Brexit was about. We have not got Brexit, and as dull as the battle might sound, in order to deliver all the policies that you were talking about, to control our borders, to prevent these illegal migrants coming in, to cut taxes, to deregulate, which is not doing anything about the 4,000 EU statutes on our books, to do all of that, to make this country an independent, nimble, trading nation, which is our DNA, we have to ditch the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. We've got to get Brexit done. And the one thing, I'm going to open up to questions in a second, but the one thing I'd say to all of you is when challenged about how rubbish Brexit is, I was going to say something else, but I think someone's filming. When challenged about how rubbish Brexit is, don't get into the trap of defending Brexit, because we haven't got Brexit. The ticket was quite clear. Do you wish the United Kingdom to remain in the EU, or do you wish it to leave? Well, we haven't left. Northern Ireland's been left behind, and we're tied at the hip to the EU. That's a very quick sort of, trot through the various obligations we've got. And I think I've got 20 minutes here, but I'm going to give the last 10 minutes to questions, because I know I'm speaking to an audience that knows a hell of a lot about Brexit. Thank you. Yeah.
Bearing in mind the reluctance of the political class to actually give us a decent Brexit, how do you...
We haven't got Brexit. I'm going to correct you. It's not an indecent Brexit. We haven't even got Brexit. Yeah.
So their reluctance to give us Brexit and their malfeasance all the way along through the procedure, how can we go ahead, how can we move forward and put the pressure on them to actually get it done properly?
Well, the biggest mistake, the mistake we mustn't make, is to fall for the Tory line that, you know, the basic Tory line at elections, which is, we know we're bad, but the other lot are worse. You do not reward failure by incumbency. And the message we've got to get across to people is that even if our actions result in a Labour government and a thumping Labour majority, and that might be much worse than the Tories, we've got to take the fight to the Tories. We've got to allow the Tory party to be, we should be enabling the Tory party to be decimated. I hope that you can clip that and tweet it. The aim should be to destroy the Tory party because they have misled the country. And that doesn't in itself get the result that you're seeking, but it's the beginning of the right process. And when Labour let us down, which they will, we then have to destroy the Labour Party. And we have to keep destroying the political class until they learn that they're there to represent our interests and not their intellectual fantasies. Yes, gentleman at the back.
My name is Paul Elliott. I've come from Bishop Stortford. My constituency is the Hertford and Stortford constituency. My MP is a woman called Julie Marson, the Conservative. Many of the issues that have been spoken about this afternoon are issues that I've consistently written to her about, in particular migrants in boats, and lots of other issues as well. I've probably written something like 40 emails and letters in the last 18 months. Not once have I had a reply from her. Can you believe that? It's absolutely incredible. I'm probably being persecuted actually because I heavily criticised her on a number of occasions. Right. What is it that I can do to make that woman sit up and take notice?
Well, the only thing politicians, really MPs, take notice of is the prospect of losing their seat. So, you know, that's what we have to do. We've got to make sure, even if we can't get seats on our side of the debate, we've got to make sure they lose theirs. That's critical. Can I just talk briefly about the boats? Don't be distracted by the European Court of Human Rights as being the reason why we can't control illegal migration. It's a Tory trap. They want you to blame the ECHR because it's a bogeyman that they can keep pointing at. The real problem that we haven't got a grip of this issue is not a legal one, not a domestic law issue. It's not a European law issue. It's because, and someone alluded to it, not that I endorse the action, but you've got to take physical action in the channel. And we have a right, under international law, to protect our borders. The UN Convention for Laws at the Sea, there are a number of provisions, but Article 98 is one that might be quoted at you, and people say, well, you're obliged to rescue people in the sea. You're only obliged to rescue them if it's reasonable to do so. And if these people are willfully making that journey, an illegal attempt to enter our country, they must be physically stopped at the point of our terror. That is the only way of dealing with them.
That was one of the questions I wanted to ask, actually. A lot of talk is that processing Sunak is going to clear the backlog before the next
It doesn't work. Deportation, yeah. So the message...
rescue them, yes, but
Yeah.
rescue them, put them back on the boat.
But you, okay, so I'm going to stop. You can't rescue them. Because the minute they're on a British boat, they are subject to British law. And the minute they're subject to British law, you then have to deport them. You've got to push the boats back into French. It's very simple. It requires a more robust political will than we have. But that's what you have to do. Do not fall into the trap of thinking that deportation policies are failing. Deportation is what you need when border control has already failed. Okay, so don't get caught in that trap. We were told by Priti Patel that the Nationality and Borders Bill would resolve everything once it became an act. It didn't do anything. We're told now that they're going to prevent them from claiming asylum in this country. They're going to have to go abroad. We were told about Rwanda. You know, how Rwanda was going to sort everything. Nothing. These are all Tory traps designed to keep us busy debating the issue while they don't do the job. Why aren't the crew of RNLI arrested for aiding and abetting illegal crossings of the channel? It's basic. Right, gentleman at the back with the jumper.
Australia solved it in one. There's a boatload of people, this sounds absolutely terrible, they would not let that boat land with Legram. The boat sank, they drowned. They never.
Australia has the benefit of much more water. And, you know, we're 5 miles off the coast of France, sadly. But we can still use the same policy. Sorry, gentleman at the back.
Thank you. It's all very well to talk about destroying the political parties.
Yeah.
That's fine. The only snag is it's beyond our power to do that. It is absolutely beyond our power to do that. But there is something else that we can do. We can force the political parties to change their minds. And the only way to make them change their minds is to threaten their livelihoods. And they threaten their livelihoods by putting candidates up against them who take votes from them.
Yeah.
That's the only way we are ever going to be successful.
I agree, yeah, absolutely. That's how you do it. But I wouldn't let them know that we're just here to change their minds. We are here to destroy them. That's what it has to be, and you have to set out with that aim. Reform is now, people may have their own independent views of reform. I'm not a member of the Reform Party, by the way. But they are polling 8 to 10%. And if that number translates into those number of votes at a general election, the Tories are toast. And that's what the Tories need to know. They need to know they're toast. And the critical thing we mustn't do this time, and with the benefit of hindsight, I'm extremely disappointed that we did it last time, is stand down candidates because the opposition is worse. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask about that because we're in Winchester at the moment, where the so-called Conservative MP is a guy called Steve Bryan,
Yeah.
who held on to this seat by a handful of votes. To the south of here is Caroline Noakes in Romsey and Southampton North. These two were among those group of so-called Conservative MPs who had the whip withdrawn, the Conservative whip withdrawn, for trying to undermine the whole Brexit process. They voted along against...
Absolutely, the Ben Act, the Surrender Act.
The
Yeah.
Surrender Act,
Yeah.
exactly, yes. Now, my question was two-part. One, was that a mistake, standing down at the last minute? And two, one of the reasons for this conference today, one of the main themes of it, has been talk of an umbrella-type organisation, not necessarily replacing any of these various political parties on the centre and centre-right, having some kind of umbrella organisation where they can at least cooperate for the purpose of electioneering and making sure that we don't stand against each other and make sure that we have candidates in every part of the country.
So, in answer to your first question, I think it was a huge error of Nigel Farage to stand down 317 candidates in the last election. We bit our lower lips, we towed the party line, and we trotted out the wisdom that was given down to us by Nigel, that actually Corbyn would mean a second referendum and we'd lose Brexit. Actually, what we should have done was make sure, if necessary, we had another hung parliament, and we should have kept doing that until we got a proper Brexit. And actually, there's only one form of Brexit that's genuine, and that's a Brexit without a deal. The minute you say you need a deal to leave the EU, you're philosophically unsound, and you will not be able to leave properly. You've got to leave. You've got to be prepared to leave without a deal. So that's the second thing is forming an alliance. And forgive me, I hope you don't mind me speaking frankly. I think it's very difficult to form alliances between political parties, particularly on our side of the debate. We're all libertarians, we're all semi-mavericks, we all think we know best. We're all here because we want to champion the people, we're against the big blob. And so it's terribly hard to bring people together. And, Richard thinks he's going to do it, you guys think you're going to do it. And there are other parties as well, there's the Heritage Party, there's Reclaim. If you could bring them all together into one party, that would be, I think, a force to be reckoned with. In a way, I wish this meeting was taking place in 2 weeks' time, because there's a fifth or sixth party which desperately needs our help as a country. And I haven't seen how they're going to respond to the Windsor framework before I come out about them. But the party that really needs this country's support, does anyone know which party I'm going to... is the DUP. The DUP stand between the United Kingdom existing and not existing. It is on their shoulders. The very future of the integrity of our country rests on the shoulders of the Democratic Unionist Party of Northern Ireland. And no provincial party should have that responsibility put on its shoulders. But that's what Boris Johnson and Sunak have done. They've put the entire responsibility for holding our country together on this small Northern Irish party. And I'm waiting to see how Sir Geoffrey Donaldson reacts to the Windsor Framework. The Windsor Framework, by the way, is more lipstick on a very ugly pig. The Windsor Framework, I can go into detail if you like, the Windsor Framework is awful, it needs to be rejected. If Sir Geoffrey comes out and rejects the Windsor Framework, I will be beseeching every one of us on our side of the debate across the political spectrum to be supporting the DUP, because they are the ones that hold the key to the Union, and therefore they hold the key for Brexit and a bright future for the United Kingdom. I think I've done my 20 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Excellent, as always. Thank you. And